Iraq deteriorates, a Benghazi capture, George Will on rape culture, and the Redskins trademark. I'm John Romero, and this is the Square Circle. Hello and welcome to the Square Circle. I'm your host, John Romero. Joining us today are independent writer Yasmin Barani, journalist Gregory Clay, political consultant Marcio Coimbra, and PhD candidate James Hedrick. The biggest story this week is the situation in Iraq, while the group known as the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, advances toward Baghdad. Iran is joining forces with its Shia neighbors in Iraq to oppose the terrorists. This week, President Obama announced that he'll be sending in 300 American military advisors. Yasmin Barani, as an Iraqi yourself, you have a unique perspective. What are we missing about the situation?
Well, what I am stunned by is kind of an inaction. I know I sound unkind because they're sending military advisors, but I don't think there's a military solution. I think there's a diplomatic solution, and that calls for our Secretary of State to go to Baghdad and try to bring all the factions together in one room. But again, I'm stunned because our Secretary of State is not in Baghdad. Last I heard, he was hanging here with Leonardo DiCaprio, having fun. And so it's kind of odd. While the Middle East burns, our Secretary of State is hanging with Hollywood.
James, want to jump in?
I think I actually agree. I don't think there is a military solution, but I think the diplomatic solution that may happen may be the dissolution of the country. And so I think that if there's a diplomatic solution that gets all the parties into one area, I think you're going to end up with either a dissolution of the country into multiple units or pieces of it going to other countries, and then the fight actually starts to broaden. And so I think that the issue with getting all the, and I don't think that, like I said, don't think there's a military solution. I think the problem with the diplomatic solution is that people start fighting over the pieces, and that brings us actually a larger war.
Yes. What happens if the military advisors don't work? What happens if the goal cannot be accomplished with military advisors? The reason I bring that up is because history often repeats itself. Remember, Vietnam started with what? Military advisors. President Kennedy sent 600 military advisors to Vietnam, as I remember. And they couldn't do the job. And then it just escalated and escalated. So we'll see what happens.
Marcio.
I think this is the biggest failure from Obama's administration in his foreign policy. I mean, he could not cut a deal with Prime Minister Maliki to leave the American forces there. So President Bush started the withdrawal, and there would remain some forces. And President Obama couldn't reach an agreement with Prime Minister Maliki. But why? Because Prime Minister Maliki, he's more into having friendly conversations with Iran. So, because they are at the same side. So what do we see now? We see a president with a huge failure in diplomacy, a huge failure in foreign affairs, and he cannot cut a deal he could not cut a deal in the past. How come he could have cut a deal now?
I hate to bring up the deal of the past, but the deal of the past was cut. Maliki wouldn't let the troops remain, largely because it wouldn't go through the Iraqi parliament.
But he cannot go through the Iraqi parliament because they are mostly Shiites, and they are supporting the Iran's government as well.
And I understand that, but it's a democratic system supposedly that you set up. If you want to support a democratic system, you have to let it go through the democratic process. Maliki wouldn't do that, so there's no troops. Honestly, I think the pullout was probably the right thing to do. I don't necessarily agree that 300 military advisors are going to do much now, but I don't see it as a failure nearly at all.
I think it's
I think
it's not,
throwing good money after bad maybe.
I think it's not going to make a difference, 300
Mhm.
now, but we should not have withdrawn our forces from there.
Well, clearly, the forces were withdrawn a little too early because I don't think it would have deteriorated to the level that it has deteriorated. And it's true that the SOFA, the Status of Forces Agreement,
Mhm.
The Obama supported Alawi and Christians and Kurds who don't live in Kurdish areas. And so that was really unfortunate because people thought, what kind of democracy is this? We clearly voted, we want this guy, and here's the United States backing another guy.
I interject with two quick questions regarding the withdrawal of troops. Wasn't that already going to be set in motion regardless of what Obama was going to do?
Very good questions. The first one is the status of forces, the withdrawal. Yes, under the Bush administration, there was an agreement that the troops would be withdrawn, but a certain number would remain to make sure everything's okay. And the disagreement was that Maliki wanted those troops. Okay, the U.S. said if any of those troops do anything wrong, they would have immunity. And Maliki said no such luck. They will not have immunity. And so if they did anything wrong, they would be subjected to Iraqi jails. And that was something the Obama administration couldn't agree to, and rightly so. But there could have been some negotiations that could have rectified this. And then your other question was about could they do anything to bring the factions together? I happen to think yes, diplomacy is a possibility. It's a complicated reply, but yes, because I think that once you get them all together, obviously Maliki out of the way, and the U.S. is right to pressure to get him out of the way. I think the rest of the people will see it is to their advantage to get along and make peace. I really think they will see that. Because the Kurdish North, the instant they declare independence, right now it's a landlocked country. The only way they can get oil out is through Turkey. Right now Turkey is giving them a chance. The minute they declare independence, they're going to raise the tax that they charge on transporting the oil through Turkish territory. So the Kurds will suffer if they declare independence. The Sunnis have nothing. If they declare Sunnistan, there is absolutely nothing there. It's just desert. There is no oil that we know of. So you see, and it would be to their advantage to avoid.
James?
I'm not entirely convinced that it would be to their advantage to work together. I think you're going to see, you've already got a significant set of patron relationships in that region with Turkey and the Kurds and Syria and the Sunnis. I think you're going to see a deepening of those relationships, and I think you're going to see a migration. I think that part of the problem, and if you want to blame anybody, I think that you probably want to blame the British at this point, is setting up a country that had no real unity to begin with in the area. And so that I think that at this point, there may be a diplomatic solution, but I don't know if there's a diplomatic solution that ends up with Iraq as it is right now, a country with sort of no history, geographically poorly designed, and with a great many ethnic divisions when it was set up. So I think that if you get a diplomatic solution, you can end up with no Iraq as it is right now.
All right, moving on from this topic, I'd like to remind our audience that you can submit your questions to our guests through our website, www.publicsquare.net, and we'll answer as many as we can live on air toward the end of the show. This week also, U.S. Special Forces nabbed Ahmed Abu Khattala, the main suspect in the 2012 attack on U.S. personnel in Benghazi. But some point out that the reason it took so long was that Khattala was treated as a criminal, which meant that the U.S. had to wait for the legal system to run its course. If he had been treated as an enemy combatant, the U.S. could have killed him immediately without a precision strike. James Hedrick, is Khattala a criminal or an enemy combatant?
This one should be pretty easy. He's a criminal. Pursuing terrorists as criminals has been shown to be more effective. We're better at it. Militaries aren't set up as judicial systems. Once we catch or capture or kill the enemy combatants, we don't run through any process. We don't learn anything new. The guy's a criminal, run him through the system. Part of the purpose of it is to show that you have a system that works better than a terrorist one. So let him experience it to its full effect. Have him come in as a criminal, learn what you can from him, put him through the judicial system. And finally, as an enemy combatant, is not an enemy combatant. He doesn't get to be a martyr. He doesn't get the glory, and he doesn't get the pedestal. So treat him as a common criminal.
Gregory, agree or disagree?
I agree with that. I understand that the criminal courts, as opposed to military tribunals, have a good track record in terms of convictions in these guys. So hopefully that trend will continue. I also believe that one of the reasons the situation happened when it did was to provide cover, to provide a distraction for President Obama, because he was getting pounded about Iraq, pounded about the VA, et cetera, et cetera. So now he can say, okay, hey, I caught somebody, and that, gives him a little bit of cover from all the heat, that he's been taking, the past few weeks. And because so much of life and so much of politics is about timing, and you can't tell me that a lot of this stuff is coincidental. Sorry, not buying. No way. No way. You can plan things, to take some of the heat off, drive that media cycle, drive CNN, MSNBC, and Fox. We saw that back in, 98 with the Monica Lewinsky thing with Bill Clinton. Remember when all of a sudden Bill Clinton launched those airstrikes? Remember that?
Yeah, I think it was in Sudan.
There you go. And because he was getting burned every day about the Monica Lewinsky thing. And I believe that this was a bit contrived, shall we say.
Marcio, your thoughts?
I think he's enemy combatant. I think he should be taken to Guantanamo. Guantanamo was not closed, was it? Because it was like a promise during his campaign.
Right, he did promise that. He did promise to close Guantanamo.
It's not
but
closed.
it's not closed.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so it's open.
Right.
So I think we should take him there like we did with all the other terrorists. I mean, he is an enemy of this country. He's an enemy of freedom. He's an enemy of democracies. And I mean, he committed horrible things. And so I think that his destiny, plus he has intel that he can give us that is very, very important to catch some other terrorists.
That's why he's on that slow-moving boat to the United States.
Oh, you never know.
That slow-moving boat, so they have more time to question this.
So I think, as we did with the other terrorists, and they were very effective. We didn't have any terrorist attacks in U.S. soil since then. Since considering all this, I think we should take him there. If Guantanamo is open, because the president can close it any time since it was his promise.
Right.
Yasmin, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's not that easy because he is not a common criminal in the sense that he just shot somebody off the street. He murdered a U.S. ambassador, and that is an act of war. It truly is. I mean, that is not a common crime. So it's hard for me to think of him as just any old criminal. But the problem is if we call him enemy combatant, then we have to put him in Guantanamo Bay. And the problem with Guantanamo Bay is it is an endless place. There's
a PR nightmare.
Nobody knows where to put those people, because if we bring them to the United States, it will be difficult to grant them the same rights as U.S. citizens. We are fortunate enough to live here and have all those wonderful rights to a free trial and defense and whatever. If we don't have the money, the taxpayers pay for it. Would the U.S. taxpayers be happy to pay for KSM's defense and others? And also once they are found guilty, because so many of them have said, yes, I am indeed guilty, where are we going to put them? As you know, there is no place to put them because local communities in different states have rejected the idea of welcoming these terrorists in their midst. Nobody really wants them to live in their states. So we're sort of stuck. If we put him in Gitmo, we don't know what to do with him next.
Any other thoughts?
Well, as a couple of the arguments. One, we're pretty good at convicting people and locking people up in this country. I got no problem with that. The guy's going to be found guilty. There's more than enough evidence. The only problem is that, to come back to exactly your point, if you label him an enemy combatant, you give him status automatically. All right, he killed somebody, he killed a federal official, he should go through the federal court system, he should be afforded every one of those rights that we get. He should be afforded every lawyer that he gets, and then he should be convicted, found guilty, and sent to the place in Kansas, and honestly, the local communities can just deal with it. He goes to they already go to maximum security prison there. That's what happens. If you put him through that process, if you let him go through that process, you make a distinction between the U.S. system and a terrorist system which will capture and hold people for years without trial or release.
So
I think that you're really setting yourself up for a really bad PR nightmare, which is what Gitmo, Guantanamo, and the whole concept of NEB combatants has been. The purpose is to get people on your side, not antagonize everyone that's not in the U.S.
But murdering an ambassador is...
It's an act of war.
It's an act of war.
It's
not like he mugged someone.
And also the problem is when you say you give him status. Do you think there's people... First of all, you think they don't have status? They're perceived as heroes in the Muslim world. That's
of course they are.
And number two, do you think once they get locked up in prison here that they will stop acting? Have you heard of the blind Sheikh, Omar Abdurrahman? Do you think he's been sitting there knitting all this time? He's been directing, at least for a while he was directing terrorist projects from the prison. So you don't really silence them by putting them in a U.S. prison, and you know they get 3 hots on a cot, as we say.
Of course.
And, I don't know. I mean, it's
a
difficult situation. It's not quite that easy, as our colleague here said. He didn't quite mug. He didn't see
I know.
somebody's hand.
He killed a federal official and can go through the federal court systems. That's what they're set up for. Huh?
Why our?
Why ours? Because he killed one of our people. He killed one of our people. We brought him in, send him through the system, show the purpose of the U.S. system, and then lock him up, throw away the key. That's fine. And I mean, I'm pretty sure that a maximum security prison can keep him pretty silent and, incapable of actually directing any terrorist activities, and then give him a couple of years and you forget about him. The longer you put him in Guantanamo or get, whatever, some version thereof, the longer they sit there with no rights and some sort of status of nothing, he's going to continue to basically give a PR nightmare for the United States outside.
And besides, he's just one guy out of how many of them conducted that terrorist?
Oh yeah.
So.
I'm not saying we shouldn't go get the rest of them. I'm just thinking this,
and bring them all here to the United States.
Oh yeah, bring them all here, try them, put them in jail. That's what it's there for.
And U.S.
really
soil.
Good. Yeah, U.S. soil.
And,
exactly on U.S. soil.
And with total lack of respect for the people who live near that prison.
And there's not a lack of respect for the people. I know that. I mean,
you just said they should just deal with it.
They need to do. That's because they already have a maximum security prison there. And I'll tell you what, that many places in the United States, particularly rural areas, are more than happy to get a prison. Because it's a pretty good economic driver of the locale.
Yeah, but American prisoners are different from international terrorists.
I don't disagree with that, but you got plenty of U.S. forts around the country that have, U.S. military forts that have jails in them that hold it.
But the people spoke and said, in such states as Indiana, they said they didn't want the Gitmo criminals in.
Well, this guy is also different than the Gitmo and the Guantanamo prisoners. We're talking about setting up a completely different system, a regularized system that's not, ad hoc as it's been for the last, 12, 13 years. Run them through a system. And, the people in Indiana have a maximum security prison. People in Kansas have maximum security prisons.
They don't want KSM.
They don't get to vote on killers that come to their prisons either, serial killers or anything else. I understand the issue of the local. I understand the issue of the local areas, but honestly, I don't think that's even close to the biggest issue here.
Okay, we'll move on to our other stories making headlines this week. One was from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, who has dropped syndicated columnist George Will because of a recent column that discussed in part sexual assault on college campuses. Post-Dispatch said the change has been under consideration for several months, but a column published June 5th in which Mr. Will suggested that sexual assault victims on college campuses enjoy a privileged status made the decision easier. The column was offensive and inaccurate. We apologize for publishing it. Now, you've all read the column in question. Marcio Coimbra, what is the Post-Dispatch was the Post-Dispatch taking Will out of context?
I guess you're taking this out of context. I mean, if you were dealing with what he wrote, it's not the fact of what he wrote. It's the fact that he writes. I mean, and he has the freedom to write whatever he wants in the United States. You have to remember that George Will was a Pulitzer Prize winner, and he writes for around 500 newspapers all over the world. And in this country, he has freedom of expression, and it's the same right that the same people that are attacking him and saying that he's wrong, they have the same right to say what they think as he has the right to say what he thinks. So we live in a politically correct dictatorship now in our society. So even the Washington Post said that he acted within bounds of legitimate debate. And I think he's a victim of the moment, and he should have the right to say whatever he wants. And I am really sad to see this newspaper limiting the freedom of expression. So I think the point in every column is to raise a debate, and I think he did. So if you were pro or if you were against, he raised the debate, and everybody is debating about the issue now. So that's his job, and he did it perfectly. I mean, that being fired because of that, I think it's a shame.
Yasmin, your thoughts?
Well, I think the column was clearly, I mean, the newspaper used it as an excuse. I think they had been trying to end his column for a while, and they used this as an excuse because they had so many complaints about it. The column is, I think it's unfortunate. I mean, he could have said what he wanted to say in a less offensive manner. I think he chose to say some things that he believes, and he just chose really, really uncool words. So it's unfortunate.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, George Will did what Mitt Romney did during the campaign. Remember when Mitt Romney made that 47% comment? That was, as I remember,
I think we all remember that.
Yeah, it was
Slipped my mind for just a minute.
You
But,
know, it was secretly taped or whatever. You know, and you basically accusing 150 million people in the United States of just wanting something for free and all this kind of stuff, and of course it riled up a lot of people. And George Will, for years, he's been on this victim thing. He's basically, he's been talking about that for other people. I mean, not just women, but how so many people want to be victims. And with Mitt Romney, is so many people want something for free. And I mean, should the St. Louis Post-Dispatch just drop him because he said something that some people didn't like? To me, I don't think so. I mean, that's one of the purposes for a column. Not everybody's supposed to agree with what you say. I mean, that's part of the gig. Understand where I'm coming from? That's part of the gig.
Yes,
if you write something that 100% of the people like, it means something is wrong. Then again, you write something that's 100% of the
That's
people
not much of a column.
don't like.
Right.
then it becomes a Garfield and not a political column.
Right, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Well, like or don't like.
And he raised the issue. For
Right, he
debate.
did raise the issue.
Well, here's
Right,
the-
and it's provocative, but he
Yeah.
was disrespectful to
Yeah.
women.
Well, there's a couple of things, and first, I think that George Will may have gotten caught in a moment of honesty more than anything else. But it's not out of context. He's a curmudgeonly guy that said curmudgeonly things.
Like Mitt
It's
Romney.
pretty much quoted straight up.
Yeah.
It's not taken out of context, and it's not a First Amendment issue. It's not even close to a First Amendment issue. If the government had come knocked on his door, took him away, and
Right.
said you can't say that,
Then it's a
that's a
First
First
Amendment
Amendment
thing.
issue.
It's a
This
First
is a company that owns a paper in St. Louis. A company that owns a paper in St. Louis going,
Right.
God, Lord, this is hurting our bottom line.
Right.
Get out. That's
Right.
libertarian as all get out, man.
Right.
That's the free market going,
Right.
George Will's a bad columnist.
Right, right.
He wrote a bad column.
Yeah, and they've been trying
it's
to
not a
get rid
freedom
of
of
it.
A
expression
bad
issue.
column for certain people.
No, it's
that
actually
made
just
a
a
pressure.
It's actually just a bad column. I've read
That
it.
you're
It's
making
just,
a judgment.
yeah, I'm
mean,
making an artistic judgment. It's a bad
Yeah,
column.
because a lot of people may agree with it.
I'm not talking agree or disagree. I'm saying it's artistically a bad column, but
I mean,
Even
You know.
so,
the guy has a Pulitzer Prize.
they had a
70s,
chance. They had a
30s.
chance to not run it. They chose.
Right.
They had to know what was coming after running it,
I don't
and they
disagree.
probably didn't mind all the clicks that came on the website
came
after
out.
the fact as
And
well.
I don't disagree with that at all, but it's not a First Amendment issue.
I would agree.
It's not even close to a First Amendment issue, and it's saying it's a dictatorship is overblown.
And for,
But,
and first
people saying that he should not write. Do you think that's correct?
Oh, again, we come back to an issue of freedom of expression. If I say he shouldn't write, I'm making a judgment call that he's a bad writer.
Oh,
Right.
but you can.
I can say he can't
You
write.
can't.
I can say he shouldn't write.
He shouldn't write.
Yeah, I can say he shouldn't
that
write.
You
Yeah.
have the right to not write his
Yeah, which is so subjective.
Right.
Yeah.
Saying somebody can't write, that's such a subjective thing.
Everybody should
Right.
have the right to
Right,
write.
right. Some people say, "Oh, he's a great writer."
He's George Will, man. He'd go online and get more
Right.
clicks and more money.
Right.
than
If he's
going
getting
to the
syndicated
same-
as he is, I'm
That's
sure
it.
losing the Post-Dispatch is
They're not
not.
going to hurt that much.
not a
he
big
writes
deal.
for the
Yeah, because isn't he in something like 500 papers?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not meant to
500
hurt.
It doesn't really hurt him that
worldwide,
much.
He's-
not just
Right.
U.S.
Yeah.
He's
Furthermore,
probably enjoying the publicity.
it's great publicity for
I think
him.
the St. Louis
Yeah,
Post.
'cause,
I think
you
the
know,
St. Louis papers enjoying the
great
publicity. I think
publicity.
it's not a terribly
Yeah,
bad
because
idea for them.
what do they
either.
say? All
Thing is
publicity
bad
is good.
publicity,
Exactly.
right?
There's no such thing as bad publicity. Furthermore, don't
So they
you
say.
agree that the First Amendment is the most misunderstood amendment in this country?
Very
It
much
has
so.
to be. It
Very
has to
much
be.
so.
It's the most misunderstood amendment in this country. Has to be.
Yeah.
All right. Finally, another major story right here in our own backyard was that the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office revoked the trademark of the Washington Redskins, saying the name was offensive at the time it was applied for. The decision is pending appeal, but Gregory Clay, what do you think of the controversy?
Well, the Redskins, Washington Redskins, have been involved in controversy for 50 years, 50, 60 years, if not longer. You know, I'm going back to history again. You know,
Team likes to say it's tradition.
well,
It's a tradition.
They can call it tradition. I can call it a controversial history. You know, that's what I would call it. Gregory Clay. The Redskins name is an offensive name. You know, and all this stuff about we're honoring American Indians. You know, I'm sorry, we're not honoring anybody. You know, I've been hearing that for years. I mean, I'm 57 years old. You know, ever since I was born, I heard about this stuff about you honoring American Indians. You know, when you call them the Washington Redskins, and because the Redskins essentially on the same scale as the N-word, and I dare say, if they were called the Washington N-words, I don't think a lot of black folk will stand for that. One of the problems that the American Indians have is numbers, you know, because there's so few of them. They don't have the numbers to really fight this thing. You know, a lot of them are fighting the issue, but they're hurt by the numbers game, because for one thing, so many of them were killed during the Cowboy and Indian Wars, you know, back in the 1800s. And as so far as the Washington Redskins, don't forget, the Washington Redskins under George Preston Marshall, the Redskins were the last team to desegregate in terms of bringing black players to the team. You know, the Redskins are the NFL version of the Boston Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox were the last Major League Baseball team to have a black player. That was 1959 when they brought in Pumpsie Green. The Redskins brought in Bobby Mitchell, 1963, one of their most famous players. They got him from the Cleveland Browns. You know, because as I remember, George Preston Marshall, the owner back then, swore, you know, a black player would never play for my team, et cetera, et cetera. But he was under so much pressure. You know, that word is popping up again, pressure. Just like Mr. Snyder, the Redskins owner now, is under so much pressure. You know, the Senate is on his case. American Indians are on his case. Black folk are on his case. You know, everybody, well, I should say everybody, I don't want to stereotype, but so many people on his case except for the players, you know, themselves. And you know, and some people are taking their own stand. You know, some newspapers, you know, have said they will not use the word Redskins in the story. You know, in their sports pages especially. You know, Seattle Times announced, when was it? Thursday,
yeah.
Wednesday.
Not too long ago.
Yeah, announced that the paper will no longer use the term Redskins. Just call them Washington. You know, and some people are saying, okay, we'll treat the Redskins like the N-word, you know, say the Washington R-words, you know, call them that, which is kind of crazy, but, I mean, it's different, but, you know, people, you know, might get a chuckle out of it, but it's you know, it's on that par. Maybe with all this pressure, the same style of pressure that was applied to George Preston Marshall to get a black player, finally, you know, maybe Mr. Snyder, you know, because now this has become a money issue, and money can move the world like other things can't, as we all know, that maybe he'll finally relent and finally change that nickname. You know, we'll see. Again, we on stage, we'll see, just like President Obama.
Marcio.
I think this is a question of freedom. They should have the freedom to decide, and I think if they have the pressure to change their name, they should, but they should not be forced to. So I think it's a matter of freedom at this time. They should not be pressured by the government. If they are pressured by, their Okay, you can.
No, I'm sorry. I'm shocked because I think we can all agree that the Native American Indian community is hurt by this name. But the matter at hand is that the U.S. Patent Office withdrew this.
Yeah.
I truly don't know. Has this ever happened before?
Mm-hmm. Many times before. This is not a first time occurrence. The Patent and Trademark Office revokes trademarks all the time.
You can do that. Okay.
Yeah, no, it happens all the time. This is not a unique occurrence. It's happened to the
And it happened
Redskins.
to the Redskins
Before the
before these back in '99.
Yes,
Oh,
they've revoked
I
trademarks for a
truly
very
did not know.
they've
For
revoked
the same reason.
they revoked trademarks for a variety
the
of
Trademark
things under
Office,
offensiveness.
as I remember, revoked the term Redskins back in 1999, as I remember.
Yeah.
And the Redskins, as I remember, appealed, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
And won the appeal. And just like the Redskins,
And they can
Mr.
appeal
Snyder
again
is
now.
appealing
they
again.
can
appeal.
He's appealing now.
They can appeal again.
Yeah.
This is not forcing. This is not. I go back. This isn't an issue of freedom. They're free to call them whatever. The Patent and Trademark Office just says that actually you can't trademark it because it's offensive, so other people can sell your offensive stuff if they feel like
they
it.
want to.
It's not forcing. It's not
Somebody's
even
saying
forcing.
that's offensive.
Yeah, somebody's saying
I
that's
mean,
offensive.
somebody's deciding what is offensive
That's
to me. I don't agree with that. That's freedom.
It's not. They're not saying it's offensive to you.
Right. Yeah, basically
not
all the
freedom.
Trademark Office is saying is that, I mean, like he said, someone can
To
take the
let an
term
office
Redskin.
decide what is
Yeah.
and not what it is.
Administrative
Yeah.
law like that happens all the time.
Yeah.
The only problem is they didn't revoke the. I mean, they revoked the trademarks, but
It
there's
happens all the
nickname
time, but
stays.
it doesn't mean that it should happen
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah. The nickname stays. Mr. Snyder, even though the Trademark Office ruled this, Mr. Snyder can still call his Washington Redskins the Washington Redskins. However, he doesn't have sole possession of the Washington Redskins. In other words, you, Marcio, you, my man, could have your own printing press.
Actually, don't do that yet because
You
it
know?
has to go through appeals.
Yeah,
It
yes.
really would be.
Yes.
You know,
that would be a large trademark
and
violation.
print up 50,000 T-shirts with Redskins on it.
Now, as soon as the as soon as the
Yeah.
First Circuit Court
You know,
rules on it,
yeah,
we can
he-
all get in together, and make
Exactly,
the
and make some
Redskins,
money,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You technically do that and make some bread. You know, that would
But
hurt.
he-
That would hurt the Redskins in the long
But he
run
had
because
the name registered before, right?
right. You know,
They come up for review every. I don't exactly
So,
remember every how often.
Is
it
this
is.
safe to say you don't think the term is derogatory in nature?
yeah.
No,
That's
I
the core
think
issue.
that nobody should decide it. I
Yeah.
mean, that there shouldn't be an office deciding that, or somebody deciding that with a pen in his hand. I mean, the people, the fans, they should decide it.
You mean the Native American community should not
They have no
say-
right to decide.
say it offends them?
You know, but
No,
somebody's calling you.
they should have the right to say what they want.
You know,
But at the same side, the fans and the owner of the team, they should have the right as soon as they have it registered to use it,
But
if
they're
they have it
hurting
registered.
the feelings.
No.
her-
One of the tangents you brought up is the numbers.
right. The American Indians
Is
don't
there
have-
enough? Is there enough Native Americans to do a million
Exactly.
man march?
Million
What
man
Native
march. That's one of
Americans
the problems
think about
that
it?
the American Indians have. Most American Indians that I've heard do not like the term Redskins because I'm using the analogy again of black folk. You call some black folk the N-word, you got some problems. You know, for a lot of black folk, especially for a white person calls a black person an N-word, to a lot of black folk that's grounds for homicide.
But that's
Okay,
that's
understand where I'm
just-
coming from?
That's just
You know,
the first
that's grounds,
step. We have
you
the
know,
Cleveland
that's-
Indians, and we have
Right.
a whole bunch of things.
Right, we got the Cleveland Indians, got the Atlanta Braves,
Florida State.
you know, Florida State
So-
Seminoles.
In fairness,
There
the
you go.
Seminole tribe
know,
does get a
yeah.
cut of Florida State.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
true.
Yeah, they
They've
do
got
get
they've
something
got
out the
agreement.
deal. You know, Chicago Blackhawks. Okay, and some schools.
So this would be just the first one.
You know.
There are
No,
many-
it's not.
No,
It's-
but remember, some teams have changed their nicknames that had Indian references. Perfect example is St. John's. Remember, St. John's used to be called the Red Men. Okay, they changed it. Now they call themselves the Red Storm. Okay, Marquette used to be called the Warriors. They changed it. Okay.
But
Right.
I think if you call somebody a chief, it's not an insult. But if you call somebody a redskin, it is an insult. If you call somebody a Seminole, it's not an insult. But if you call somebody a redskin, that is an insult.
Because it's
I
viewed
think
as
that's the problem. The word
Yeah.
itself is
Yeah, it's viewed as a racial slur to a lot of American Indians in this country. And again, it goes, I still say, one of the biggest problems that American Indians have is the numbers game. So many of them have been killed off. You
I think
know,
many see
you know.
the
Right.
controversy, but it's being debated by
Yeah.
a lot of people that aren't Native American
Right, exactly, right.
as far
they
as visually.
get drowned out a lot, you know. Watch, I mean, you saw it, okay, let's go back to Hollywood. We saw what happened the Cowboys and Indians and old Westerns. They killed off. Hey, in one context, that thing is real. I think the American Indians had the numbers, like the American Indians had the numbers, on a par, say, with black folk. I think this thing would change. Now you have to hope that the money issue becomes big enough in which it hurts one Mr. Snyder. And call me Mr. please, because he said call me Mr. Snyder, else he'll fire you. But anyway, that if it becomes a money issue, then I think things will change. Because money
and it didn't become a money issue.
Yeah, it can become a money issue.
No, it didn't yet.
It can though. This trademark issue could make it a money issue. If Redskins start losing money, and if the other 31 NFL teams start losing money because of this, it can become an issue.
It'd be difficult, but the flip side of that is if they were ever to entertain the name, their fans are still going to end up having to rebuy jerseys, any apparel that they want.
And they will make more money.
But what happens if they start losing advertisers and sponsors? Remember what happened with Donald Sterling and the Clippers? Things start to change when all those sponsors start to pull out and those advertisers pull out. Now, if we ever get to that point, you may see some changes.
If it no longer becomes FedEx Field and it's just field.
Right, just field. When the Redskins play, they play at the field.
Maybe Snyder's just waiting for the $2 billion
come across, Oprah Winfrey and her people get together and say, just like with the Clippers or whatever, and he can make. With the Redskins are so popular and they're much bigger than the Clippers, Mr. Snyder might get $4 billion. I'm serious. Follow the money. Think about Watergate. Follow the money. There you go.
We're going to take some questions from our viewers, and the first is on topic. If anyone can produce Redskins merchandise, won't that result in more offensiveness rather than less?
Yeah, it very well could result in more merchandise. But I think the point that the groups that are doing it is to try to basically pressure them to change the name. And I think that once you take away the trademark protection, you take away the ability to universally benefit from the name. I think that's the point. It may briefly, but I don't think that Dan Snyder's going to sit by very long and let people sell RG3 jerseys, with Redskins on the back of it for $12 when he's trying to sell them for $57 and not, make any money. So it's a pressure tactic, certainly, but it's certainly not meant to actually produce, I think, more gear.
Any other thoughts on the topic? We do have a second question. If the Benghazi suspect is not an enemy combatant, then what is an enemy combatant?
That's for you.
I think it's a terrible term we should do away with. Personally, I think it's bad. If it's there's rules of war and there's rules of not war. But basically, we've shown that treating them as criminals, treating them as criminal investigations, is a better tactic for dealing with a lot of this than military incursions are. The military is a fine tool, but it's a specialized tool. All right, and it's not meant to sort of do to take on this whole thing. And so, if he's not an enemy combatant, I think we do away with the term, essentially.
Any other thoughts? You obviously, I think James was in the minority as far as who was declaring as an enemy combatant. Right now, it's time for our most underreported stories of the week. Gregory, we'll start with you. What's the most underreported story of the week?
Okay, I'm back to history again. I should be a history professor. Anyway, beside all that, you will probably be hearing more about this, as the days and as the summer continues. This is the 50th anniversary of Freedom Summer, and the next question, I guess, is to a lot of people is, what was Freedom Summer? Freedom Summer occurred back in the summer of 1964, when college students, mostly from up north, most of them were white, about 1,000 of them, came down to the Deep South to help black folk try to register to vote. Back then, yes, a lot of black folk were denied the right to vote. They had to pay a poll tax, or had to recite the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and all this kind of stuff, pass some kind of literacy test and all that. And many of them were denied the right to vote. And this is the 50th anniversary. It was a major undertaking. You didn't see the gains right away, but it was a historic event. Now, I want to bring this up now. Why? Because Saturday is June 21. What happened June 21, 1964? 3 civil rights workers, Michael Schwerner, James Chaney, and Andrew Goodman, were kidnapped by the Ku Klux Klan. They suddenly became missing persons. It's probably the most famous missing persons case in the history of this country. I don't care what anybody says. It's the most famous missing person case in the history of this country. The car in which they were driving was found 2 days later on June 23, burnt out and everything. The bodies were discovered in an earthen dam on August 4. The FBI was called in. I don't know if you all remember the movie Mississippi Burning. Came out 88, 89. Gene Hackman and Willem Dafoe played the FBI agents. Much of the movie was fictionalized, but you get the point. Also, Norman Rockwell, one of his most famous paintings was one of the 3 civil rights workers. It was called Southern Justice. Great painting. If you haven't seen it, just go to Google, or if you want, go to the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. But this whole summer, essentially, we'll be remembering Freedom Summer. Also remember in Freedom Summer, July 2, 1964, President Johnson did what? He signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That was a landmark day. July 2 was a Thursday. So Freedom Summer basically was about a 10 to 12 week period during the summer of 1964. So, and that's something that we should remember. Also, there's going to be a PBS special documentary airing next week, I believe June 24 on this, and there's going to be major remembrances. The students from up north, the white students who came down, will be involved in special remembrances in Mississippi this month, in June as well as July, and there's all kind of remembrances going on. So it's something that we definitely should remember, because it got the ball rolling on a lot of things. Not only the Freedom Summer, but the white students from up north also helped set up those freedom schools, which taught a lot of black students things about black history, helped them with their reading, and the black kids back then were so happy that someone was teaching them things that they weren't getting in school. Because remember something, in a lot of the Deep South back then, it was illegal to teach black students black history. Okay, understand where I'm coming from? That's one of the reasons Freedom Summer is so big, and the black kids, 10, 12, 15 years old, were welcoming, this, because it was so different for them. They were denied that in school. It was illegal in a lot of the Deep South. That shows you also how far we've come. And that thirst for knowledge back then, and I have to say it, but sometimes that thirst does not exist now in regards to a lot of black students. So perhaps a lot of black students in our country now should read about what happened in 1964 in the summer, and maybe a lot of black students in our country will take reading and take school more seriously than they do now. That's it for me.
Marcia, what's your underreported story this week?
Yes, Vice President Biden is in Brazil for the opening of the World Cup, and he's visiting President Dilma, who was running for re-election as president this year. And Edward Snowden said in his interview about 2 or 3 weeks ago that he applied for asylum in Brazil. And the Brazilian government said they didn't get it. They didn't get any communications from him. But, and if we can remember Brazilian and the United States relations, they were tense last year when the Brazilian president canceled the visit here, when some evidence came up saying that the NSA was spying her private cellular phone. So, and the Brazilian government, I know some people there, it's been discussed the possibility of getting an asylum for Edward Snowden. So I think this visit of Vice President Biden with the Brazilian president is very important for the U.S. interests and the relations between the two countries. I heard that the state visit that was canceled last year is going to occur next year with a new president or with this president if she is reelected. And if that happens, probably Brazil wouldn't give any kind of safe harbor to Snowden.
Yasmin, your turn. your underreported story of the week?
Honestly, I have to go back to Carrie being with Leonardo DiCaprio. I think that the media, the press, they should be ashamed of themselves for not taking him to task for that. I don't understand this silence. Where's the outrage? The Middle East is imploding, exploding, burning, and he is fiddling while Middle East burns. Our tax dollars pay him a hefty salary to do a job for us, and he is just hanging out with Hollywood, and I think he should be ashamed, and I'm shocked that nobody's talking about it.
James?
Now go back south of the border. Colombian elections and negotiations between the Colombian government. There's a Juan Manuel Santos getting reelected recently, very slim margin, but it's opened up negotiations for the FARC and the ALN in Colombia, possibly, hopefully, one hopes, bringing into what has been conflict for the last several decades. Very underreported story, and I don't think anybody's really talking about it. I'm interested to see how that turns out.
4 good ones right there. That is going to do it for the show this week. I want to thank all our guests, and thank you for watching The Square Circle. We'll be back next week.